The title Shutter Island anagrams to truth and lies, as well as truth denials. Shutter Island turns 15 years old this week, so here are some things I bet you never knew about it. The story behind Shutter Island starts during the Boston blizzard of 1978. Future author Dennis Lehane was 13 years old at the time, and his uncle brought him and his brother out to the abandoned mental hospital on Long Island in Boston Harbor. As Lehane later told the Patriot Ledger, there was a minimum security mental institution on an island in Boston Harbor, but it was connected by a bridge. It was called Long Island. I believe it had stopped being a mental institution in the 1960s, and it was a home for the mentally handicapped. He brought us there during the blizzard of 78, and it was really barren. Nobody was using it at that point. And he told us that sometimes, usually right about now when the sun was going down, the ghosts of the former patients would be seen in the woods. And then, because it's my family, he vanished. That was our sense of humor. And me and my brother were walking around the woods and truly thinking we saw people in mental institution straitjackets running past us. Lehane would grow up to be a successful author. In 2001, he released Mystic River, which would become an Oscar-winning movie in 2003. And for his follow-up book, he thought back to that car trip to Long Island and wrote Shutter Island, about a U.S. Marshal who investigates a disappearance at a New England island hospital for the criminally insane. He said he changed the island's name from Long Island to Shutter Island to make it sound more sinister. Quote, "That would have been a really crappy title. I don't think it would have had the same shiver." The book became a bestseller in spring 2003, and the film rights were quickly optioned by Sony's Columbia Pictures that same year. Columbia ended up not acting on its option, and the rights reverted back to Lehane, who in turn sold them to Phoenix Pictures. The studio best known for co-producing The People vs. Larry Flint, The Thin Red Line, and Holes. Phoenix hired Leda Kalogridis to write the screenplay. She had previously written Night Watch and Alexander. Phoenix and Kalogridis developed the script for about a year, and at one point David Fincher was considered for director with Brad Pitt as the lead. There was also a thought that the movie could be more action-oriented, and Air Force One director Wolfgang Peterson came to mind. But in 2007, Martin Scorsese and Leonardo DiCaprio read the script. The two of them had worked together 3 times previously: The Aviator, Gangs of New York, and The Departed. And they were actively developing The Wolf of Wall Street at the time. They were trying to get it made at Warner Brothers. But the WB kept stalling the project due to budget concerns. According to Variety, Kalogridis' script quickly drew them in, and so they put Wolf of Wall Street down and signed a deal with Phoenix and Paramount Pictures to make Shutter Island. Paramount would then later make Wolf of Wall Street as well. Variety says they began scouting locations for Shutter Island right away. They looked at Connecticut and Nova Scotia, but would end up shooting mostly in Massachusetts. Robert Downey Jr. and Josh Brolin were both considered for the role of Chuck, but Mark Ruffalo won the part by writing a passionate personal letter to Martin Scorsese. Ruffalo wasn't a major star yet, and this note helped him immensely. According to The Hollywood Reporter, most of the casting was done in late 2007 and early 2008, and Michelle Williams ended up shooting the movie just 6 weeks after losing her partner, Heath Ledger. Shutter Island would be Martin Scorsese's deepest dive into horror yet. He drew inspiration from Dana Andrews in the 1944 noir film Laura, as well as 1940s horror films by Val Lewton. And before filming, he screened Hitchcock's Vertigo and the 1947 film noir Out of the Past for the cast and crew. Scorsese also brought on NYU professor James Gilligan to serve as a psychiatric advisor on the movie. Before cameras started rolling, Shutter Island made $22 million off international distribution deals. Paramount and Phoenix then gave the movie an $80 million budget, and filming began in March 2008 in the Bay State, under the production title Ashcliff, which is the name of the hospital in the movie. The primary location for the mental hospital was the old Medfield State Hospital in Medfield, Massachusetts. They shot the Dachau camp scenes at the Whittington Mills complex in Taunton. The owner of the mills told Enterprise News at the time, "I never thought that it would be this magnitude. I mean, they have hundreds of people here and they've taken over the whole site." When the Boston Herald heard how the mills would be used in the movie, it wrote, "Don't expect a feel-good flick when this one hits theaters." The cabin scene was filmed at a stone lodge next to Leech Pond at Borderland State Park in Easton. Peddocks Island stood in for the Shutter Island. They shot the lighthouse scenes at East Point in Nahant, and the scenes where Teddy and Chuck are caught in a hurricane were done at the Wilson Mountain Reservation in Dedham. They also shot at the Crane Estate in East Boston and on a soundstage in Hyde Park. I'm not going to go into spoilers in this video, but Scorsese wisely included intentional continuity errors in the film to keep viewers off balance. In one scene, a patient can be seen drinking from an invisible glass of water, and then in the next shot, they have an actual glass of water in their hands. The harrowing nightmare sequence where Dolores turns to ash was inspired by the Scandinavian folk creatures Skogsgra and Huldra, who are beautiful forest figures with hollowed out backs that would turn grotesque if abused by their husbands. The imagery in that scene was also inspired by Gustav Klimt's painting The Kiss. DiCaprio reportedly attended a number of Boston Celtics games while he was shooting in town, including their finals run against the Los Angeles Lakers that year. The Boston Herald reported that Leo usually sat courtside, but at one game his ex-girlfriend Gisele Bündchen was there with her new boyfriend Tom Brady, and so Leo moved up to a luxury suite. Production on Shutter Island wrapped in July 2008, and the Boston Herald reported that the wrap party happened aboard the Spirit of Boston dinner cruise. While the story appears grounded in reality, the movie includes a substantial amount of visual effects done by the Syndicate. Both interiors and exteriors were created with a mix of practical locations, miniatures, and green screen compositing. Shutter Island doesn't have an original score. Instead, Scorsese hired his friend Robbie Robertson from the band to hand-select a collection of modern classical music for the film. The soundtrack includes tracks from John Cage, Mahler, and Brian Eno. Robertson once called his work the most outrageous and beautiful soundtrack. Paramount was originally going to release the movie on October 2nd, 2009, perfectly primed for award season, but then it delayed the film's release to February 19th, 2010. According to Deadline, this partially had to do with the general economy, which was still hurting from the '08 housing crisis, but also Paramount didn't have, quote, the financing in 2009 to spend the $50 to $60 million necessary to market a big awards movie like this. Additionally, Leonardo DiCaprio wasn't available to promote it around the world during that time frame, so Paramount pushed it to 2010 and premiered the movie at the Berlin Film Festival February 13th. The movie then opened on nearly 3,000 screens February 19th, 2010, and it grossed $41 million opening weekend domestic, landing at number 1 and giving Martin Scorsese his best opening ever at the time. It stayed at number 1 in week 2 and ended up grossing $295 million total worldwide, which is more than 3 times its budget. Shutter Island is Scorsese's second highest grossing movie ever behind The Wolf of Wall Street, which made $390 million total worldwide. Critics were mostly favorable to Shutter Island. Today, 69% of the 263 reviews assessed by Rotten Tomatoes are positive. On the positive side, Roger Ebert said Scorsese broke flawless directorial command, while A.O. Scott wrote in the New York Times, "Something terrible is afoot. Sadly, that something turns out to be the movie itself." Shutter Island is remembered fondly by movie fans today. For example, it has a 4.1 on Letterboxd. But back in 2010, theater exit polls weren't as kind. It got a C+ on CinemaScore. Shutter Island was not nominated for any Oscars, and in fact, it's the only Scorsese-DiCaprio collaboration to not be recognized by the Academy. But it did manage 5 Saturn Awards, plus nods from the Casting Society, Visual Effects Society, and Art Directors Guild, and the Teen Choice Awards gave Leo Choice Actor in a Horror/Thriller, while the National Board of Review put it on its list of the 10 best movies of the year. The film fueled the book back up the bestseller charts. It also spawned a point-and-click adventure video game for PC that followed the plot of the movie and required you to find hidden clues in various rooms. It was developed by Merscom LLC and Anino Games Inc. and was a massive flop. There was also a planned Shutter Island game for the Nintendo DS, but it was canceled. In 2014, Paramount and HBO were reportedly considering a TV series spin-off called Ashcliff that would have served as an origin story to the movie, but it never materialized. Scorsese and DiCaprio would go on to work together again on The Wolf of Wall Street, Killers of the Flower Moon, and are currently preparing a crime drama set in Hawaii that will also star Dwayne Johnson and Emily Blunt.